In this episode of the Crafty Stitches podcast, we are going to talk about my Ember shawl, my pair of socks that I'm knitting for my husband, the wrist warmers that I've been re-knitting, the sleeveless jacket that I am attempting to knit, a blanket project, as well as some yarn that I've been buying and dyeing. So let's get started. Good day everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Mariette, also known as die Boervrou, and this is episode 35 of the Crafty Stitches podcast. Today, as I am filming this, it is Thursday the 20th of April 2023 and I'm coming to you from South Africa. We are moving into autumn here and it is beautiful seeing all of the leaves turning, and I'm really enjoying this in between weather, I would say. Just cool nights, and I love the fact that I can reach for my hand knit items to keep me warm and cozy. But anyway, so I hope that you are doing well wherever you are in the world, if you're going to spring or if you're also going into autumn. I hope that you enjoy this transition in the weather. So anyway, I have lots and lots to talk about today, and I think we should get started. So just before I start with the projects that I have finished, I just want to quickly share what I'm wearing. This is my Larimar Tee that I have knitted from Moya Shimmer, which is a hand-dyed, South African hand-dyed yarn. It is a 50% cotton, 50% bamboo blend, and yeah, I really enjoyed knitting this pattern. I will link it down below if you are maybe interested. So let's move into my finished projects because it is quite exciting. So as I'm sure you guessed, my Ember shawl is finished. I am not exactly sure how to store shawls, so if you have any suggestions, please let me know. But I just rolled this one up after blocking it so that it can keep its shape, I hope. So I have finished this shawl and I am absolutely in love with it. It is quite big. The finished project measurements is, I think, 155 centimeter wingspan, and mine is a little bit bigger. I think it's 179, but I did add it all to my project page on Ravelry if you're interested. So let me see how I can maybe show this to you. Right, so in the previous episode, I was at this point here, right there, where the last row of the previous color is, and I ran out of yarn in the next row, which I was expecting, but anyway. So I really enjoyed making this shawl. I did do all of the rows in the pattern, not in the suggested colorways, meaning that I did run out of yarn on section 1, I ran out of yarn on section 2 and on section 3. But anyway, I made it work, and yeah, I am so delighted with how this turned out. It is just gorgeous. Anyway, so let me talk about the yarn quickly. One of the reasons why I ran out of yarn is because I did not do a gauge swatch. So anyway, but I still finished the whole project with the 3 hanks of yarn, so it is still a win-win situation. So the yarn that I used for this project is Miss Lamotte Singles. It is 100% superwash merino yarn. It has approximately 366 meters on 100 grams. And I used the 3 colorways. The dark color up here is called Midnight. This beautiful color here is called Aqua Mist. And this last color that I used is called Sky. Alright, so how much yarn do I have left of each of these yarns? That is all the yarn that I have left of this project. So if you have watched other episodes, you would know that I ran out of yarn on my first section. I needed to still do like a transition band here, which I couldn't do because I didn't have enough of the blue, because obviously my gauge was off. But I did not do a gauge swatch to check, so it's all on me. Then I just proceeded with the second color until it also ran out, and I just wound off the little bit. I did always stop at a beginning of round or then the end of the round. If I ran out of yarn in the row, I ripped back to the beginning of the row and changed color. So I had bits of every color left. And then when I came to the border, the last row of the shawl, I also ran out of this color. And then I thought, well, this is the perfect opportunity to bring all of my colors together. So what I then did is I counted how many of these little points I would have in the shawl, and I divided it up so that I had more or less the same amount for each color. And then I did a few of the last row in the third color. Then I switched to the second color here. Then I switched back to the first color. And then for the rest of the border, back in the second color, and the last bit in the third color. So I really like how it came out. I think it is gorgeous, and I love the fact that it is so big and that it has this curved end. It just wears so much easier for me in that way. So this shawl is washed and blocked. All the ends are trimmed. It is completely finished, and I am very happy with this. I don't even think I mentioned the name. This shawl pattern is the Ember shawl by Jane Van Salis for Expression Fiber Arts. So I did crochet the shawl with the recommended 4mm hook size, and I did change the hook size to a 4.5 for the transition band as suggested in the pattern. The other thing that is great about this pattern is that there is a schematic in the pattern that shows you which points of the shawl to pin out first. And if you don't know much about blocking shawls, it is a great start because it really shows you where to put your pins and how to stretch it out and that type of thing. So I really enjoyed that the shawl had a schematic to help a little bit with the process of blocking. My goodness, I think that is everything of the shawl. I did add the exact amount of yarn that I used for the shawl to my Ravelry project page if you're interested in that. But as you can see, I use most of the 300 grams of yarn that I had, and not sure what to do with the little leftovers, but I will just keep them for now until I know what to do with that. So that is my first finished object for this episode. So the second project that I actually finished is the wrist warmers that I was making. I actually re-knit these. They were in a ripped pattern before. Let me put them on. And I have a whole lot to say about these two. But they're also finished, washed and blocked, and they just dried this morning outside. So this is what it looks like. This is basically how I wear them. So in the previous episode, I was about 3/4 of the way done with one, and then after I finished it, I decided that it was too snug fitting on my arm. So I ripped out the second wrist warmer and I started it, did some maths again and restarted that one. And then I decided that that is the best fit, and I ripped out the first one that you saw in the previous episode and I re-knit that for a third time. Now they are fitting perfectly and I am super happy with how they came out. And I just wanted to explain that because that is why there is no progress keeper in this wrist warmers, because I actually ripped it out and started it from scratch. Right, so these wrist warmers are knit with the discontinued L sock wool, which is a 80% wool, 20% nylon blend. This pair of wrist warmers were knit on 2.5mm needles, and I knit one on magic loop so that I can fit it more properly on my arm while knitting it, and the other one I just knit with 9-inch circulars. And to be honest, it doesn't seem like my gauge changed from the one method to the other. I cannot see a difference. But anyway, so I started with 56 stitches at the cuff. I knit, I think, about 15 rounds of 2x2 ribbing, and then I knit different amounts of rounds, and I did a total of 4 sets of 4 increases. So that brought me to about, 72 stitches. And then after that I just knit straight up and changed to 2x2 ribbing for the top part. And then I also did the Jenny Surprisingly stretchy bind off for the top, I would say the top cuff one that's going to be this side, but on 2.5mm needles. I did not change to another needle size like I usually do for my socks, and this worked out perfectly. So I've written down how many rounds I did in between my increases, because I do have more of this yarn in another colorway that I might want to make some wrist warmers with. And I think it would be good advice to myself to knit them while this stitch count is fresh in my head and while my gauge is this gauge. Hopefully it wouldn't change again in future. Alright, that is the wrist warmers that I'm very excited about, because as I said, we are going into autumn and this is the time of year that I use these the most. And actually last night when I was knitting the second one, I was knitting it with the first one on my arm already. So already got some use out of it, even though it wasn't even blocked. And then I finished it last night and washed and blocked it and properly dried it this morning, and it's done. Very happy about that. That is all of the projects that I have finished for this episode. So let's move over to the next section and see what I still have on my hook or my needles, and talk a little bit about these works in progress. Right, so my first work in progress is still the pair of socks that I'm knitting for my husband. I did finish the first sock of the pair, and I've decided to keep it in the works in progress because it's just half a finished object. But I finished it. In my previous episode I was at this point, knit from the toe up, so I finished the heel must have been finished. So I just finished the leg and the cuff. This is knit with my own pattern, the DB Toe Up Socks pattern, and this size is the 68 stitch size, so that would mean the 4th size in the pattern. I did start the second sock for the pair, and this is how far I am on the second sock. Just a little toe and 20, almost 30 rounds into the foot. Let me move this marker. To keep my progress. This little marker is a stitch marker by Pincushion Crafts, Annegret from Pincushion Crafts. And this marker on my other sock is a marker from Ietsie Klein that came in the Naughty Habit Sock Club box of this first box of this year. Alright, so the yarn that I'm using for this socks is the Regia 4-ply yarn. It is a 75% virgin wool and 25% polyamide blend, and it is the colorway 07709, and Arthur Bale's website where I bought this said that it is called Snowflake. So that is the socks that I'm knitting. I think I will have enough. I am housing this yarn in my yarn cake cozy, the 100-gram yarn cake cozy, keep it nice and neat so that I don't get tangled up in my bag. So this pair of socks I'm knitting on 2.25mm needles. The toe I did on a fixed 80cm needle, I think they're 80 centimeters, on magic loop, and then I switched over to the 9-inch circular to knit in the round. I think that is about what I wanted to say for these socks. They are quite long because my husband is wearing a UK size 11 shoe, so they are quite long, but I really enjoy knitting these socks, and I love knitting for him because he is so knitworthy and he wears his socks every day. So if you have been wondering, if you're new to sock knitting maybe, and you're wondering why I have all of these markers attached to the sock, and it is just to help me keep count of the rounds that I've knit, so that I don't have to go and sit and try and count all of the rows every time I want to see how many rounds I already knitted and so forth. So I do have a lot of these light bulb markers, as you can see. I use them quite a bit, and they make life so much easier. But that is the socks, and I think I can move on to the next project. My next project for this episode is the sleeveless jacket that I am attempting to knit. So let me show you where I am at the moment. In the previous episode, I was at this marker from Jalene from the Lekker podcast, and I only finished that little bit on it. But this is the back panel, and this is underneath the arm like that, so at the back. I still need to do the attach or pick up stitches here at the top and start the fronts, but I've only designed it this far on a chart, so I still have to put in some time and continue designing this because I'm making it up as I go. I actually measured one of the sleeveless jackets that I owned and made a little drawing of it, measured it up and worked out how many stitches and rows I would need to replicate that in this stitch pattern. So I'm really enjoying this project. I had quite a lot of things on my plate the past 2 weeks, so I did not put in as much time as I would have liked, but I still did some progress. So I'm knitting this on a US 7 4.5 millimeter needles, and this yarn is the 100% acrylic yarn that we buy in the supermarket here, Checkers. It is called Chick, and I in the meantime saw on Ravelry that this colorway was called Funfetti. But yes, so some more progress is needed on this project. I am still enjoying the project quite a lot. Right, my third whip is the blanket that I'm knitting from polyester yarn. I just recently watched a podcast by Nicole, the Professor Pearl podcast, and I'm sure she was talking about this yarn because she was calling it eyelash yarn, and I thought, wow, that's a that's a good description for it, because it does look like eyelashes. Anyway, so in the previous episode, I was at that marker down there from Ietsie Klein as well. And that is the progress that I put on this blanket during the past 2 weeks. I did in the meantime change to a red lace Chaigu cord that is a little bit longer because it was so squished up on the shorter cable. I couldn't do that. So it is quite big, and I am knitting this to be draped at the foot of our bed, so it will go on the bed like this from side to side. So I still have a long way to go, because if I remember correctly, I'm supposed to knit this way for 190 centimeters, I think, almost 2 meters. So that's going to take a while, but I'm really enjoying this project. And yes, there's not much else to say other than I'm enjoying the project. This is the label of this yarn, and that is the back. It doesn't specify how many meters is on a 50-gram ball, but I have a lot of it, and I am going to attempt to use up every single bit that I have. I also wanted to mention, because I am knitting this in garter stitch and it will be very stretchy, I am adding I-cord on the side just to help give it a little bit of structure so that it does not just stretch out too much. And it seems to be going well. It looks as if it is doing its job and not pulling in too much, I think. So yes, I think that's everything for this project. I am currently knitting from a knitted piece, because as I said, I was going to make a jacket with this, I think. So I'm just unraveling and knitting the yarn over to the blanket. So I needed quite a big bag for this project. Right. So that is that whip. And then for the more exciting things, I've been talking about the Stonecrop Cardi from Andrea Mowry, and I was going to cast this on my birthday, but then life happened and I couldn't get the yarn dyed in time, and I got sick, and lots of things happened. But anyway, so in the meantime, I have dyed up all of the yarn, but I started with 2 samples because I bought 2 different dye colors. I bought some acid dyes from natural yarns. And when it came, I decided I'm going to make a experiment first. Well, not an experiment. I'm going to make 2 samples first to see how dark this colors is going to be, and then decide in between which ones I want to use for this cardigan. So the 2 samples that I dyed up was this one, which is a violet color, and then this one, which is called lilac. So side to side comparison for you, this one being the violet and this one being the lilac. Then I decided, all right, I need a contrast color, because I was first thinking making a dark purple and then as a contrast making a very light purple. And then I thought, no, if that doesn't work, what else will I do? And then I decided, I think I'd rather go with a natural undyed color for my contrast for this cardigan. So when I finished that up, I actually decided that when I started knitting this project, I immediately decided that I'm going with the lilac color as my main color, but I still swatched with the other one to just make sure. And this is the swatch that I made. So it's knit in the round with all of these yarns hanging out, and I am loving how this is looking. It is gorgeous. So my color work is a little bit sloppy, and this part of my swatch was knit with a this part was knit with a 4mm needle, and this part was knit with a 3.5. Now the pattern does suggest a 3.75mm needle for the color work, but number one, I don't own a 3.75mm needle at this stage, and yes, I could go buy one, but when I knitted this, I decided that I love this fabric of the 3.5mm needle much more than the bit opener, bigger gauge. So I decided, well, I will just have to do some maths. So I must still figure out all of the maths for this 3.5mm gauge. I really like the way it looks. It is really, really pretty. I'm not completely sure that I pulled off these little arrows so well, but it is still going to be one beautiful cardigan. All right. Then I'm sure you saw that my bobbles is looking very bad. So these bottom bobbles is crochet bobbles as suggested in the pattern. And then I saw that I am making the biggest holes that I've ever seen with this bobbles. I mean, there are quite big holes in this cardigan. So I thought, okay, let me try knitted bobbles, and that I couldn't get right at all, and I still had big holes, as you can see there. So I then decided, okay, gonna have to go with crochet bobbles, but how am I gonna close these holes? And then I practiced a little bit more down the road of these bobbles, and I actually got one right. So this is my completely last crochet bobble, and I think I've eliminated the hole. So if this works when I do this cardigan, I might do a little tutorial on how I closed that hole. But anyway, so we shall see. But this is my little swatch, and I am planning on starting this cardigan maybe today, after I worked out the maths, because that has been holding me up a little bit. Right, now let me show you the yarn. So what happened is, the pattern suggests for my size on the gauge that it is knit on, I think 5 hanks of yarn for the main color. And the yarn specified has got the same meterage as the sock yarns that we have here, the 75% superwash merino and 25% nylon blend. It's got 366 meters on 100 grams. And the yarn in the pattern has got the same meterage to grams as this yarn. But it's called the Stonecrop Cardi, and it's very cropped. I think when I measured my beekeeper cardigan that I knit last year as a birthday cast on, I love the length of that, and if I measure that against the schematics, the body needs to be double the length. So I decided to make 7 hanks. And because it's a sock yarn, if there's any leftovers, I'm gonna knit socks with it. So I made 7 hanks, but my 7 hanks in total came out to something like 760 grams of yarn. But I dyed it anyway. So I was going for a semi-solid type of color, and I was hoping for a little bit of variation, and I'm very happy to say that I did achieve that. So I've got 6 hanks here of the 7. Not neatly done at all, but anyway, and I caked up one of them. I think this one is 110 grams, so I'm not sure that it's going to fit inside my yarn cake cozy, but anyway. So hopefully this will pick up the variation in color on the screen, and I'm in love with how this came out. Even there on the side you might be able to see that some strands is quite a bit lighter than others, and I'm loving it. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this is going to work. So I'm going to use this as my main color, and just plain old natural, as you saw in the swatch. Anyway, so that is the update on my cardigan. But now, when I was dyeing this yarn, I used a glass bottle with some water to rinse my spoon in every time I measured some dye powder. So afterwards I had this little bit of purple dye left, and I went through my cupboard, and I know that I would like to also make a sample little scarf with the alpaca yarn that I bought in a sample pack from Stukken Yarns long ago. And I decided, let me dye up this alpaca yarn. So I threw that little bit of, I think I used the spoon 4 times, and I threw that in a dye bath, and it was such a lovely light color. And this is what I got out. Isn't that just gorgeous? So I was so impressed that spooning some dye powder 4 times to measure it made this color. Anyway, so this blend is a 66% alpaca, 10% silk, 19.6% wool, and 8.4% nylon. So yes, I'm thinking of pairing this with this, and I think it's going to be beautiful. So this with some sock yarn will become a little scarf so that I can test this alpaca for wearability around my neck. I'm looking forward to that as well, but I definitely had to stop myself because I think I do have enough whips to keep me busy for a while and not cast on another project in between, because I really want to start this cardigan. And I think the cardigan is going to be a bit of a challenge, not because it is sock yarn, not because it is color work, but because I can already see from the pattern pictures that there's a few things that I would like to change. I would like to change the depth of the cardigan at the back. There is short rows included in the pattern as I understand it, but it is not high enough for me at the back and it's too high for me in the front. So I will still have to figure something out when I start this cardigan. I have heard designers talk about doing short rows in the ribbing of the neckband as well. I'll have to research that a bit and see if I can put in more short rows somewhere so that the back of the neck is raised up higher. We shall see. So just before we move over to find out what's been happening, I also wanted to share a yarn purchase that I made yesterday. I bought this yarn. It is the sock weight yarn, the 75% merino, 25% nylon, 3-ply sock weight yarn, 366 meters on 100 grams. And this is called Cherry Chocolate. So I bought this yesterday from Lauren at Little Yarn Craft. And I bought this because I asked my sister-in-law if I can knit her a pair of fingerless gloves, because I remember last year she was talking about some gloves and she was cold in her home office, and I said to her, listen, can I knit you a pair of fingerless gloves just as a gift, just because? And she said that that would be lovely. And I took my phone yesterday when I was with her and we went through Lauren's shop online, and she chose this colorway, and I just immediately purchased it, sent Lauren a message and said, listen, I am in the area, can I quickly pick this up? And got the yarn. So that is ready to be started as well. So this will be seen very soon on the podcast as a project being made. I'm very excited about this. I think this yarn is just gorgeous and I love this colorway. Just look at those beautiful, beautiful little specks. Just beautiful. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this actually knits up in a pair of fingerless gloves. Right, so let's move over to find out what's been happening. Last week's video was a quick tutorial on how to avoid a twisted turning chain when crocheting flat. So I made this quick tutorial and shared it on YouTube because I found this is very annoying when you get back to the beginning of the previous row and you want to crochet into your turning chain and you cannot find the stitches and you don't know where they're supposed to go. So I made a little tutorial of that. I also taught this technique to my students when I had crochet classes, and it is such an easy thing to do. So I will link that for you up here and down below if you're interested. Alright, so then as well, please remember that on the 1st of May, my friend Liani from Independence Yarn Crafts and I are hosting another Ranunculus make-along. So it's going to be hosted for the complete month of May. We are going to have 3 meetups for this make-along. All of the details is on my Instagram page with the times and dates that we are going to join, and I am very excited because I actually ordered my yarn for it. It has not arrived yet, but it should be here soon. I decided to just close my eyes and buy the yarn for this ranunculus because I want to make a long sleeve version, and I also want to test out the L Merino DK from L, which is a new base that they just brought out this winter. So I'm waiting on that, and I'm very excited to try this new yarn. Now, usually I wouldn't just make a whole garment with a new yarn. I would usually just try it out one ball or so, but I decided let's just do it. So I'm waiting on the yarn, and if you would like to join us for this make along, please send me or Leonie a direct message on Instagram or leave it in the comments down below, and we can make sure to add you to the group on Instagram the moment we create that. So I'm really looking forward to that. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that I've started a Etsy shop for my patterns, my crochet and knitting patterns. I am still in the process of adding all of these patterns to the shop, so they are not all on there yet, but if you're interested and Ravelry isn't accessible to you, you can try the Etsy shop, and I will link it down below for you. The other thing that is coming up is on the last Sunday of this month, my friend Leonie of Independence Yarn Crafts and I will have another Scrappy Sunday chat episode. It is going to be a live one. We have an exciting guest. Not going to tell you who it is yet. You will just have to wait and see. But we are very excited about this upcoming Scrappy Sunday chat, and I think you will all enjoy this one a lot. So keep your eyes peeled. We will be sharing on social media and here on the channel where how late that will be and who the guest is going to be. So keep your eyes peeled for that information. Alright, my podcast recommendations for this episode is two that is new to me. The first one is Sarah's Stitch. So this is Sarah. She's living in Hoboken and she knits beautiful garments. I will link her channel for you down below. The second one is Leslie Friend. So this is Leslie from Pittsburgh. I will also link that down below, and just for a fun fact, the two of us have our birthdays on the same day. So I saw that on Ravelry, and then I saw that she's got a podcast, and I went over and subscribed, and I will link that down below if you may be interested and you want to go over and have a look. That is it from me for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you're a returning viewer, thank you for coming back. If you are new, I hope that you enjoyed this content and that you would consider sticking around. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more of my content. And I will see you in the next one. Until next time, happy crafting. Bye.